For week 14, we are to create a pet store and modify a pet store. I started off by creating the pet store data class. I copied the fields from the pet store entity without the JPA annotations, and then I added the add data and add no args constructor. I created the pet store customer and pet store employee DTOs. I changed the data types to pet store customer and pet store employees. I created a construction that takes the pet store as a parameter and sets all the matching fields. And I did the same to the pet store customer and pet store employee. I created the pet store DAO. It extends JPA repository. And it has a pet store long. I also created the pet store service. And it has the pet store DAO auto-wired. I added the save pet store method, which calls the find or create pet store method. I created the pet store controller. I added add rest controller and add request mapping and add SLF4J. I auto-wired the pet store service and the add post mapping pet underscore store, add response created. And I called the method for the service class that's save pet store. I also added the put mapping, which will modify the pet store. And this one also calls the save pet store method and in the pet store service. I created a global controller error handler. I added add rest controller advice and add SLF4J. I created a no such element exception. And then built the message, which will have message, status reason, status code, URI, and timestamp, which will be used in the ARC when we get exceptions. I'm going to run the program now. Okay, now I'm going to use the post in the ARC to create a pet store. Okay, the pet store is created and it received a 201 created response. Now I'm going to do the modify existing pet using the put in the ARC. And now we have modified a pet store. And we got a response of 200. Now I'm going to try to modify a store that doesn't exist. And we got the 404 not found status error. Okay, so I wanted to check in dbeaver if the changes had taken place. So I posted a pet store. I created the turtle place. I had already created some, so it added turtle place as the 4th pet store. I modified the pet store 3 and I changed it to doggy shop and it did modify it. And here's the result.